There's a lot of people that don't step into leadership roles because something that's required for that position triggers their biggest fear. Even though they might be the best person to do that job. And in fact, they might be the person that we would all enjoy doing that job versus someone else. Because sometimes leadership and positions of power and authority self-select for people that aren't always the most civic minded.
Welcome to Just Healing, where we rediscover humanity in our conversations around trauma and celebrate all the unique ways we love and heal. Hello and welcome to this next episode of Just Healing. And we have a very interesting guest going to talk about some concepts and explain some things that I actually am very curious about. So I'm going to have Garrett Wood introduce himself to you. Garrett?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Dr. Debra. I'm Garrett Wood. I'm the owner and operator of Gnosis Therapy. We operate in Southern California. So I typically work with high achieving, high masking professionals to work through a lot of the things that keep them stuck and end up leading them to burnout at a higher rate than almost everybody else is at this point. So they find themselves on that boom and bust cycle. Some people experience it once or twice. They seem to be stuck where it's either they're doing great or they're at the high, like real low. And it's so consistent in their life that they need more assistance to help support them through it. It's not just a workplace issue. It kind of expands beyond that.
Okay, well, let's connect the dots because, sometimes, I don't track well. So what do you mean by high achieving and high masking? So everybody can be on the same page.
Yeah. So high masking, most people are dealing with some mental emotional stuff, whether that's like a high ACE score or whether that's a very specific event that they're going through or have been through. And it informs how they show up in the world, how they operate. It shows up at work, it shows up in their relationships. But a lot of the time, they're not dealing with it directly or haven't dealt with it. So instead, it comes through in other ways in their life. So they overachieve, they go out of the way. When I first opened my clinic, I worked with a lot of like pain and performance. People were like, awesome 9 to 5 cognitive athletes, but they were also like weekend warriors. And they
Mm,
were coming in for somatic pain. And as
mm,
we were getting in there and working through some of that stuff, they would also share these really intense personal stories of experiences that they'd gone through, which is actually kind of how I came across Just Healing in the first place. Is some of the stories that these men were sharing were some of the stories that some of your guests have shared in the past and some of the people that have worked with them. So it was one of the few resources we're talking about men's trauma and the things that they've gone through, specifically with like sexual survivorship, was a resource that I was able to kind of refer people to as a normalized conversation that these high achieving, high masking professionals didn't always feel comfortable sharing. So it was really nice. So thanks for putting it out there and doing all the work that you do.
yeah, no, it's very near and dear to me as people don't know because my husband's a survivor of trauma, right? And so when I hear you say high masking, I wonder, like in psychology world, in my world,
Yep.
when I say someone's wearing a mask, right, I think that they have an outside self and an inside self, right? And then you take the mask off, and there's sometimes they're like, "Oh crap," and they think that's me. People are going to see it, and they get scared, right? So, define for me like what is high masking like in your world, and for people to get.
Yeah. So for some people, they're masking their own neurodivergence to fit in a more neurotypical work environment. So at work, the way that they actually show up and are able to operate is very different than how most productivity books out there. They're
Yeah.
reading the 7 habits of highly effective people. And they're like, if I do this, I'm going to burn out. I can't
Mm,
do it this way. But the way they have to do it, they have to kind of pretend to do it that way to make it more socially acceptable. And if you're from a different culture, trying to enact in a different structural environment to be successful and it requires you to mask, that's one thing. But there's lots of different reasons why people do it, whether it's their own executive function differences, whether it's their own cultural differences. And people will talk a lot about code switching. This is my language at
mhm.
home with family. This is my language in my culture. And then this is what I have to do at work. But that's true for a lot of different types of cultures too.
Yeah, that is true. People do code switch. People do speak a different language when they're at home versus when they're at work, right? And sometimes that really weighs on people because I even know that I do that. And people I like to just talk in plain language, right? But there are times when I have to like put on the Dr. Deborah hat and talk about my manifestations of my trauma and all my inner turmoil. And I just like, who is that person? Like, and it's really difficult to switch that out. I'm thinking, am I real?
Yeah, which one's the real me? Because if you've been
Which
wearing that mask for so long and it's something you put so much work into, who are you
Right.
without it? That can be really overwhelming for people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like what is the persona? Like and who is the real me coming through, right? And then you said something about burnout, and I would say, because I'm a high achiever, burnout is a big thing. Like, how do you even help people identify that, and how do you help them work through it?
So there's a pretty decent definition of burnout when it comes to workplace culture. It's exhaustion, cynicism, overwhelm. And we culturally have kind of lopped onto that. And a lot of people talk about burnout. It's in the popular vernacular. But the people that I typically work with, they're experiencing something a little bit more acute than burnout. And it comes
Mhm.
from that masking piece. And they're going and they're going, they're going. And then all of a sudden they crash.
Mm,
And that repeated pattern, trying to make sure that when they crash, it's not at their full rock bottom, it's somewhere else, and they know how to step away before it overwhelms them so they can show up more consistently, perform their best without the like negatives that come from that. Well, a lot of people burn out and they can only do that so often before it really takes a toll on their nervous system and they're down and out for a long time. And a lot of time it does look like depression and it can eventually turn into that if they've done it so many times. It's really interesting to see that overlap there. It gets really muddled really quick. So I'm lucky to work with a lot of professionals to navigate that with clients.
yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it could get muddy. It could be depression. I mean, sometimes people even turn to substance abuse or things that are not really good for them. And does that show up in the workplace?
Absolutely. Substance abuse, coping mechanisms. A lot of people use working out as like a really
Uh,
healthy coping mechanism that turns unhealthy. I can speak from firsthand experience. That's my go to healthy coping mechanism. But I've taken it to extremes where I've had physical injuries where I'd have like surgery and repair. I tore my pec off from strength training. I had a bad spot. I was doing too much. I didn't sleep well. I was pushing past. And yeah, but also too, if you show up and that's how you kind of get your endorphins going, that's how you get your dopamine going, and then you're going to use that to get through the workday. But then you're injured or you're overwhelmed or you don't have the recovery from it, you can get in trouble. And that's when I think people start using other substances, whether that's alcohol, cannabis, and then an innocent habit turns into not so innocent. And then they start finding themselves 5, 6, 7 drinks at the end of the night. It gets troublesome really quickly.
Oh, yeah, that's a spiral, right? And then they start doing that every night, and then they don't realize binge drinking is a way to have alcoholism, right? And then they're not functional. And yeah, I hate that term functional alcoholic. No, it's a that's a term and a band-aid of a bigger problem, right?
Yeah. Yep. And I think a lot of people use alcohol as a band-aid and we think of alcoholism as the problem, but it's actually like the coping mechanism that they're using to be able to get through what the actual problem really is that they're not willing to look at. And so sometimes that comes out in some of the work and it's a way above my pay grade and we get them into the like proper care that they need. But sometimes it's something that they can work through. It's just 2 or 3 drinks, it's 5 or 6, maybe once every so often they had a rough day and giving them healthier coping mechanisms that allow them to perform without having to go down that. It's really powerful when people do it well.
Yeah, that rabbit hole, right? I mean, there's people who just cannot wait till Friday night to where they can just get like completely, and I'm like, okay, that is an issue that you're getting through your week for Friday night, right? But you do something with hypnotherapy, right? And I think a lot of people don't know what hypnotherapy is. They really think like the Swami and the ball and the yeah, right? And it's not. But so why don't you tell people like really what is hypnotherapy?
So a lot of people think what they've seen of hypnotherapy is like informed. Get Out, I think, is the movie Get Out is the most recent
Yes.
version with the lady with her like teaspoon. And then the deep space. And that's such a horrific depiction of hypnotherapy. It actually scares people. But the word is kind of more scary versus the state that it actually is. It's just a focused state. I like to say that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis because
Mm.
it's a natural state of being that people go in and out of every day. On your way to sleep, on your way to waking up into consciousness, if you're on a long car ride, highway hypnosis is a very known phenomenon where your
Oh yeah.
mind wanders and then you show up at home and you got there safe and you're like, okay, I got here. But you were not present for the ride. You were off somewhere else and you still got there. That's a normal state of hypnosis. And you often see it with like athletes, like basketball is a good example when they're doing the free throw and they have a very specific kind of obsession where they have to bounce the ball 2 times, look up, bounce the ball 2 times, look up. That's actually a hypnotic induction where they can get into that deep focus state really quickly. And it's trained in and it allows them to visualize the success of making that shot, which tends to improve the odds of it going in, which on a professional level makes a big difference for those professional athletes. But for the rest of us, we don't always have that drilled in or that practice of it. And so we turn to other things. Maybe it's like an energy drink or a coffee, in my case, to make up that difference. But there's other ways to induce that hyper state of focus that really get you to be able to perform in the moment or recover from high intense moments that make people anxious. And so the other part of it isn't just getting into a focus state to be able to perform. It's being able to create a state of deep calm and comfort around formerly anxious inducing activities or ideas or concepts. So there's some memory reconsolidation or desensitization that shows up with hypnotherapy, which is really effective.
So do you have them visualize the thing they're afraid of, or do you like have them like how do you do that? Like how do you get them out of that space? Because for me, it would be very hard for me to sit and do that. Like I'm all over the place, you know?
Yeah. So if someone likes to be moving, we can do a type of hypnotic induction that involves movement. We can do a type of hypnotic induction that involves like somatic awareness. So it'd be like squeezing one hand, squeezing another, wiggling a toe. And then as we're doing that process and you're like keeping your attention on that like pattern, then we would bring up an image and then also add in a breath there. It'd be done typically with your eyes closed at visualization. It seems to be pretty powerful. For hypnotic inductions to be effective and for hypnosis to be effective, it has to be catered to the person that's in front of you. And when it's not, it's, not an effective intervention. So most people though do have access to that state unless they can't, if you ask them to imagine an apple and in their mind nothing shows up, there is a percentage of the population that has a really hard time visualization doing that.
Mm.
And to your point, if you can't sit still, the type of hypnosis you do needs to be catered to that type of a person. Otherwise, it wouldn't be effective either. So, lay down, close your eyes, deep breathing, relax, slow your heart rate. You're actually going to get more anxious by that,
Yeah,
not calm down. And so
yeah,
that's not going to be effective intervention.
yeah,
We'd actually want to give you something to do with that anxiousness. And
yeah,
in doing that, it would make it feel calmer for you because you know what you're doing. Okay, squeeze this hand, squeeze that hand, wiggle my toes. Okay, I take that
yeah.
deep breath. Okay, now I'm doing. There's actually an induction where they do mental math where we go, okay, 100 minus 7. Okay, now minus 7. Okay, now minus 7. And giving your mind something to do consistently
Oh wow.
actually drops people down into a calmer state.
Oh wow. That's
Yeah.
interesting. So it's not like those people you see at the county fair where they hypnotize you and they say bark like a dog?
No, so it is. It's exactly that. The difference is that stage hypnosis, they're not
Uh-huh.
doing anything. That person showed up ready to bark like a dog that day. There are people that show up, they're extroverts, they're excited to be in front of people. They're not inhibited at all. They don't need 2 drinks to relax and relax their inhibition. They're ready to go as it is. And a lot of people show up in a hypnotic state already. The hypnotist is just self-selecting for those people in the crowd when he's asking
Um,
for volunteers. So that's the magic trick. He's making it look like he's doing something, but he's not. He's just finding those people. He's just filtering them out.
so the ones that are screaming, pick me, pick me, pick me, he's gonna want those because they'll just do that, right?
They'll
Yeah.
do that. And then the ones that he comes by and gives them a cue, and if they're in a state of hypnotic like association already, they will follow the command. If they're not, they won't. And so that's when they dismiss people off the crowd. So they're like, okay, let's get all the extroverts up here, all the uninhibited people. Okay, we got 30 people. Out of those 30 people, 20% are already in that state. Okay, great. Now we have a show.
That's just crazy. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
I would be one of the people they would never pick because I'd be like, dude, come on.
No,
Like,
not going to happen.
that would be so frustrated with me.
No, they're looking for people like you. They're looking to eliminate you from being on stage. They're like,
Yes,
you're done. You're
I would
dismissed.
make
Yeah.
them look so bad. Probably in their career, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If it was a room full of people like you, they would be in trouble. They would be like, uh-oh, they'd better have some other magic tricks or stage shows to
Something,
do.
something. So you work a lot with people and organizations and everything. How do you transfer all of this in? Like, tell me, what is the like? Someone calls you. What does it look like? Like, walk me through it.
Yeah, so most people that I work with work as like in a leadership position inside of an
Mhm.
organization. I found that to be really helpful for organizations because if you're the leader in an organization, you're not okay. Every single person that you touch is not okay.
Right.
If you're better, that organization's better. And so instead of kind of trying to do a top down, all above assessment of an organization, you can make some insights into that, but it takes a long time. It takes a lot of work. You got to create a lot of buy in. But if you can make 1 or 2 people that are key performance people in that organization a better version of themselves, everybody will improve. Everybody's well being goes up. And that's kind of the focus is an emphasis on well being. So
Yeah.
A lot of people think performance comes at the expense of your well-being. I actually think like sustainable success is built through increasing your well-being. So if we can do that by getting you to feel more calm and confident and comfortable and less anxious and overwhelmed, it's easier for everybody. You, the project, the people you serve.
So it's like a trickle down effect, right? Is what you're saying. So what do you do? Yeah, go ahead.
Ripple out, I like better than trickle down because I don't like trickle down economics, despite what the 80s Reaganomics. I don't like that term, so I'll stick with ripple out.
See, that's my organizational leadership hat. Like I'm like trying to put it in. Yeah. All right. Okay. So we want to do something natural stimulant. Let's go Bronfenbrenner, right? So we have
Yeah.
little micro, macro,
Yeah. There
meso,
you go.
exo,
Yep.
right? So it just keeps going like this that we create
100%.
like, yeah, our environments, right? So what do you do if someone's afraid? Like just deathly fear? Like how do you conquer through that? Because you have to have encountered that.
Yeah. Systemic desensitization. What
Yeah.
is that fear that's really showing up for you? For some people, it's speaking in public, right? There's a lot of people that don't step into leadership roles because something that's required for that position triggers their biggest fear.
Mm,
Even though they might be the best person to do that job. And in fact, they might be the person that we would all enjoy doing that job versus someone else. Because sometimes leadership and positions of power and authority self select for people that aren't always the most civic minded. And so, what's interesting for
mm.
me is when we have people that are scared to show up as themselves and take off that mask and maybe be seen and actually express that vulnerability. And that fear stops them from stepping up. Those are the actual people that I would love to be in that position. That if we had more of those people in that position, we might have healthier organizations for everybody. And so, making sure that we address that, it's a pretty powerful tool. In my mind, the big picture is like through those little things. And so, if it's public speaking, and that's what's stopping you from being a leader and stepping up in your organization, we can work on that. If it's getting feedback and fear of being seen and imposter syndrome, we can work on that. Those are pretty like concrete ideas, limiting beliefs that people have showing up like I have to be perfect or I'm not lovable, those types of things, or I'm not enough no matter what I do. Those are the kind of things that keep people stuck that hypnotherapy is really effective for.
Yeah, those are like automatic thoughts, right? Because I've learned like it's like crap, I suck, or like those are things that are ingrained from childhood that you've learned from somebody because you don't come in the world thinking that about yourself, right? So you have to trace that back. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the hard part is if you're not aware of that, like you are, if you don't have your history, they're so automatic that you just assume that it is true. There's no way
Yeah,
to even question the validity of it because you've lived with it for so long. You and I both know they didn't come into the world like that, but they don't necessarily know that
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's such like fish in the water. They don't know they're wet kind of scenario.
yeah,
So teasing that out and the
yeah,
behavior that they show up to cope and
yeah,
making those connections is kind of what happens in the longer term process. So when that
yeah.
happens, it's, chef's kiss amazing. I love seeing that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just a matter of getting someone to switch their set, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So we do a cognitive belief inventory.
Mm,
It's 100 questions. I kind of go through it. Yes, I do this. Yes, I don't do that. And at the end of that, we kind of rate it. It's really informal. It's a self-assessment, but it actually brings up these like very statements like, I'm not safe. I'm not level. And then we can kind of go from there. Oh, okay. Well, why do you think that? Or what
mhm,
stories have you had that lend evidence to that? What stories do you have that disprove that we can actually lead into more? And in hypnotherapy, a lot of people historically have done negative reinforcement. So, like for smoking cessation, they'd be like, imagine smoking a cigarette and just coughing so you can't even smoke a cigarette anymore. And that kind of works in the short run, but it doesn't work in the long run, what seems with smoking
yeah,
cessation hypnotherapy. Instead, positive reinforcement is more effective. So, in that scenario, if your belief is I'm not enough, we'd be like, oh, where's the story where you were more than enough? Like where what you did was the thing that made the outcome or that happened or where you felt fulfilled. Okay, look great. Let's reinforce that. Let's make that part of your story bigger. So
yeah,
that way when your brain's wandering, it's easier to bump up against those thoughts and those feelings and those
right,
sensations. You can
right,
have that automatic thought instead of the I'm not enough. You can have the, oh no, I got this. I am enough.
yeah. I am enough. I'm gonna get
Yeah,
through it, right?
I got this.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember when I did my TED Talk, like, I was like, "I can't memorize 30 pages, like, what is going on?" Like, you know what I mean? Like, I can't like, how who can do that? Superhuman person? And then I changed my thought, like, to, "I can memorize this, I can" right? And what happens, happens on that stage, right? Whatever comes out, comes out, right? Instead of sitting there panicking, right? I decided to take myself out of that panic, afraid stage into what can I do? Well, I can do my best. That's all I can do when I get on that stage. And that did change. That just shifted my set, right? Yeah. The part that threw me was that they said, "You need to keep your hands to your side. Quit flapping. Quit like," and I was like, "What? I move. I did stay in the circle. Stay in the circle." Someone who's not like that, that was the hardest part, not remembering
Yeah.
anything. But I think they wanted to give me something to do, like you said. They gave
Hmm.
me something to do. I focused on something else besides what was coming out of my mouth.
Yep. And then the cameramen were able to follow you and keep track without trying to track you all around the stage. Made
Yeah.
it easier for the
Oh, yeah.
production too.
I was the first time I ran through it, I perfectly did the speech, but I was just making too much noise with myself, right? So
Mm.
it was like, "Oh, okay." Like, "Okay, stay in a circle, stay in a circle." So yeah, that did change things because I just switched the set.
So now that you've had that experience, you did your best. You can
Yeah.
now see it. You can go online. How many people have seen it now? Has it changed how you think about your future, yourself now moving forward, having gone through all that?
Yeah, I bet yeah. Just in your line of work, it does because you have experience to pull back on it. You've changed the thought process. You've changed from "I'm not gonna be able to do this" to "I did it, I nailed it," right? I probably won't ever do it again, but I did it, I nailed it, right? But, you want people to say, "Yeah, and I'm gonna do it again," like,
If it's worth it, if it's worth it, you know? But you ran the experiment. Just because you did it once doesn't mean you have to keep doing it. Maybe it's not worth this distress, but
Yeah,
maybe it is. But the fact that you did it in the first place and you know you can,
yeah,
that type of confidence won't stop you from doing similar opportunities in the future,
right,
which is the cool part.
right, and what I've learned when I've worked with CEOs and people like that, one of the things that I say is, "Okay, but you got through it." Right? And you gotta pull them back to that because they'll keep grounding themselves on, "Okay, but I'm still in charge. I'm still the CEO. I shouldn't be here." Right? And so how do you deal with people with the imposter syndrome? Like, how do you move them forward from that?
Yeah, imposter syndrome to me is actually a healthy sign of not being so focused on being like, I got this, I can do anything, grandiose kind of personality, I'm better than everybody else, instead of like those kind of dark triad stuff. If
Mm,
people have imposter syndrome, it shows that there's room for growth and that they take this serious, this opportunity, and that they want to be responsible. And I think that's a good thing until it paralyzes them from being able to take action, or it keeps them up at night, or it
mhm,
keeps them in a chronic state of stress that they can't recover from, which leads to burnout. So it's not necessarily, do we need to change that thought? It's, how can we not have that thought be so consistent, so prevalent that you can't get an escape from it or a rest from it? Because I do think it comes from a healthy place, or it can come from a healthy place, at least part of it, at least. And so can we lean into that? Maybe there's something to learn here to make you feel more confident. But the fact that you have it in the first place is a sign that you are new and different than you've ever been before. You have grown and changed. You have overcome some things. You didn't start off as a CEO. You weren't born into that
no,
position, and you are now. And so let's honor that. And just because some people think that they deserve to be there and some people go, wow, I feel like, I don't know, I feel lucky to be here. Like maybe I like want to honor this and do my best. That piece right there kind of gives us a little bit of wiggle room to kind of play with some
mhm,
of those positive past experiences that they've gone through instead of the present painful ones that they're experiencing, and trying to reemphasize that through hypnosis and conscious like deliberation and experiences that they've gone through and stories that they share. But taking that conscious positive past experience and putting into like a subconscious hypnotic state where it affects the default mode network, it
mhm,
kind of changes the way they show up in the stories they tell about themselves. So it makes it easier to feel both of those at the same time.
mm. And what do you mean by default mode network?
I guess the studies on this, and I'm not a neuroscientist, so please cite them. The When we go into that kind of daydreamy state, that's kind of the area that we're accessing in
Mm,
our brain. And a lot of times that's where all of our default thoughts are. Those automatic thoughts or beliefs about ourselves, about the world, about others, and our relationship to them show up. And so when we're in hypnosis, that seems to be the area that gets activated the most. And so when we're feeding people back those positive experiences they've gone through, it seems to be a really effective tool because it works on that network where those thoughts are, where those beliefs are held. So it's kind of interesting that way.
yeah, it's like that step right before your REM, right? And so you're in that hypnotic state, right? It's
Yep.
my favorite part. Like that's a sleepy dream state where you're not quite asleep yet. I love that part.
A lot of people think that they have to go and do this special meditation
Yeah.
process. And, if you're talking to transcendental meditation
Yeah.
specialists, they're going to have a whole thing. But everybody goes into that state every day on
Yeah.
their way. They're waking up or falling asleep. And if you're someone who has like ADHD, that state is accessed more often, like while you're washing the dishes, while you're vacuuming the floor. It's almost always on. Some people, when they're doing a task, they're just doing the task. Other people, they're doing the task and they're thinking about everything they've ever done in their entire life, everywhere, all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really active for them. And
Mm-hmm.
so if that narrative is really negative, that's a state of chronic stress that they're under. And so that's actually really dangerous for people's nervous system to be. And I think that's where a lot of the burnout
Yeah.
comes from. So if we can get them a chance to take a break from that, not just like in a hyper focused state or on a motorcycle at 1,000 miles an hour, but they can just be washing the dishes and enjoying their own self, that's a really powerful intervention
Yeah.
for those types of people.
And what are your steps for sustainable success? I saw that on your website. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's something that we just kind of talked about. So you assess, okay, what's going on? What are these beliefs? What are these thoughts? What are these experiences? What's the states that are pretty easy for me to
Mm-hmm.
experience? Okay, how can we accommodate the best of those? How
Mm.
can we make sure that in your environment, your day, we get the best of it and we mitigate some of the most intense or the worst of it? And then how do we design what you're trying to accomplish, your work, your relationships, to align with the best part
Mm.
of that? And it's different for everybody. Sometimes it's as simple as like setting up a sensory experience for them. So some people are really sensitive to sounds. Some people are really sensitive to smells. I had one leader where they always gave their feedback sessions in the like fishbowl. So everybody in the office could see. So it's very professional. It's closed off. No one can hear. But in there, the echo from the glass,
Oh,
like
wow.
hearing their words of feedback to this person
Oh, wow.
really overwhelmed them. So instead, they opted to take their report out for a walk. And so they'd walk around the building in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Everybody could still see, but the echo wasn't so bad. And so some of the people that they had contentious relationships with, to say it politely, ended up seeing like one of their best friends at work. They
Oh,
went from
wow.
having a really challenging relationship to going out and having drinks after work,
That's
just from
awesome.
that little switch of changing the environment that they were
Yeah.
giving their feedback in. So, yeah, pretty
Sometimes one
wild.
little thing can just change everything, right?
Everything.
Looking for those nuggets of change. So, what do you want to leave your audience with?
If you're struggling, you're not alone. Everyone is. If you're pretending that you're not struggling, you're also not alone. Everybody is. So if you're getting fooled, you're like, man, everybody's looking like they have it together.
No.
They're better actors. Everyone deserves an Academy Award. So don't let that stop you from getting out and seeking the help that you really need. And if you find yourself really in a chronic state of stress, there's an interesting little assessment I have. They can spend 5 minutes on it and they can figure out where they are in that burnout scale and what the biggest contributor to their well-being is. So something they can lean into instead of working on their low things that are like making it really challenging. People want to usually go in and challenge themselves to do the hardest thing. Maybe it's actually leaning into the easier thing. So if they want to go take that assessment, 5 minutes and they'll be able to find out where they are and what they can do personally, not just
Any other
general advice.
resources you want to give everybody?
No, I think that's probably, you want to follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn, it's Gnosis Therapy, Gnosis Therapy. More than welcome to, I'd love to see their smiling faces there or their grumpy face, whatever they show up with,
Whatever you
doesn't
want
matter.
to. Thank you so much, Garrett, for being on this episode of Just Healing. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we can't wait to see you next time.
Thank you.